This is an 8-iron, and it's a dead shank.
Wow.
Way right.
Oh,
Dead
to
shank.
hop off the path.
You got to be kidding me. Very tough pitch shot right here. You got to hit it into the hill. One hop up and bite, and it's in.
Kind of like that.
I would like to welcome the one they call half man, half amazing, two-time Korn Ferry Tour winner, Andres Gonzalez, to the Sub 70 podcast. Thanks for doing this, man. Been looking forward to this conversation for a while.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's going to be fun.
How are things in your world, right? You're kind of changing gears, doing some media stuff for the Pga Tour, some Korn Ferry work with kind of watching those guys play and giving your commentary. Like, how did that come about, and how much you enjoying being on the media side of stuff?
Yeah, last season, my last tournament was August, and I just kind of stepped back for a second. My last few years weren't, I guess, successful in a way. I was traveling, I had full status. I just wasn't playing as well. I was making 50% of the cuts and just wasn't really providing, I guess. And that's the tough part about golf. When you start playing to provide or to make money, you're kind of behind the eight ball. You got to go out and play to win and play to score. And I just wasn't really doing that. Stepping away, I contacted Jay Monahan, the commissioner of the PGA Tour, and Alex Baldwin, the commissioner of the Korn Ferry Tour, and just told them that I really liked the way the PGA Tour runs their business and was interested in getting into the media side. And they both kind of steered me in the right direction. So I started to work for PGA Tour Live, that streams on ESPN Plus. I kind of got in at a good time when they signed a 9-year contract with ESPN. So, you know, I would still love to be playing, but my priorities have changed a little bit as far as I've got 3 kids under the age of 6. And, you know, it's tough when you're on the road a lot and you're not really making money. So I was starting to think about making money more than playing golf.
Do you think, you know, because you've had a good long career, and as you start getting later in that career, do you think is it more of a mental thing? Is your body breaking down a little bit where you're not playing as good as you once did? Or is it just sort of a priority change where it's like you kind of had your run and you're okay with being, you know, a part-time golfer at this point and kind of use your personality to kind of, you know, start sort of phase 2 of your career? What sort of shifted in your game because you've always, you know, you've been out there a long time doing it, man.
Right. I don't want to put any blame on my family, but I think once I started having children, my priorities just changed. I wasn't interested at being at the golf course 8 hours a day and treating it like a real job, which is tough. I don't think I was ever somebody that was blessed with a whirlwind of talent as far as playing golf, but I always had the ability to outwork people and believe in myself. And once I had kids, I get out to the golf course and I just didn't really have the urge to stay out there. I wanted to be with them a little bit more. And for me, I needed to have a club in my hand all the time. I needed to really be doing it all the time to feel like I had an advantage. Whether or not that was the case, I mean, it's just kind of what I got in my head, and right or wrong, that's what it was. So I just stepped away. I still have a feeling that I'm going to play at some point again, but as of right now, trying to figure out the next chapter of my life, I would like to try to create something in the media world to where hopefully at some point I can keep playing a little bit down the road.
Is that hard to do then? Like you said, and I think, you know, I understand being friends with the guys on tour of the effort that goes into being prepared to be on tour and play against the best in the world, right? It's a lot of behind the scenes work. It's
right.
A ton. If you're going to play part-time, does that kind of take pressure off of you a little bit where you can kind of go out there and just freewheel it and have fun? Or do you have to then put a shit ton of work in those 3 weeks ahead of time to get yourself ready? Because, you know, you want to play well. There's pride in what you do. So how do you then, I don't know, as competitive as you are, as long as you've done it, how do you become sort of a part-time golfer but still kind of try to get the most out of that?
Yeah, that's the tough thing is that I think if you ask anybody that plays or has played at the highest level, there's really no such thing as a part-time golfer. It's a game where you have to really be all in to really be competitive. But, yeah, I have a sponsor exemption into the Korn Ferry event in Knoxville coming up in the middle of May. And I'm kind of going in with the attitude that I'm as good once as I ever was. So I know that there are days where I can play as well as anybody in the world. And I think that was one thing I struggled with even when I was playing full time, was just consistency, putting 4 rounds together and putting weeks together. I think if you see most of the players on tour, most guys make most of their money in about a 4-week stretch sometime during the year. I think you're seeing that a little bit right now with Scotty Scheffler, with he just winning the Honda and the Bay Hill.
Yeah.
Yep. And a few weeks back winning Phoenix. So, I mean, he's on a hot run right now, and we'll see how the rest of that goes. But I'm excited to play just because I miss the competition and I miss the camaraderie of being out there with players.
Scheffler was one of those subjects I was going to bring up to you, and kind of put your, let's put your media hat on and player hat, because it could be both. Like, you can see the rise starting to happen. And what do you think happens with those guys where all of a sudden they're not finishing top 6 or top 12, they're winning? What do you think that formula is with a young talent like that who seems to have all the tools, where all of a sudden now different level? What can change? Or, I mean, you've won twice on a major tour. Like, what happens with that? How do you find
I think just self-belief. I know that if you're playing on the PGA Tour, you understand that you're really good. You understand the physical aspects of what you're practicing, what you're mentally working on has gotten you there, and you're trying to get better and better at it. But you're chasing that goal, which is winning. And if you don't do it, there's always a little bit of doubt on whether or not it's ever going to happen. And once it does, it almost seems like, all right, I've either got that monkey off my back, or since you have done it, there's belief now and there's actual proof that you can do it. So it definitely makes it a lot easier. And when you go out, it gives you a lot of comfort as well. I mean, I'm sure he seemed pretty comfortable with, he's finished second and third and fourth so many times in his young career. But once he won a few weeks back in Phoenix, and knowing that he can do it, it makes it a lot easier going forward. And he obviously did it again at Bay Hill.
And I wonder how much that Ryder Cup helped him too, right? Where he played really good under a shit ton of pressure, even though he was on that team without a win. Boy, he sort of, I think he showed a lot of people. I mean, you kind of see what that kid was made of, but you could really see maybe that was the springboard, huh?
Yeah, for sure. I think that when you play under a lot of pressure like that, and it's one-on-one, I mean, it's the closest thing that we have to prize fighting is one-on-one playing and playing for your country. I've never played in a Ryder Cup or a President's Cup, and everything I hear from everybody, it's a different pressure than you've ever felt in your life. And I'm a little bit jealous that I don't really foresee that happening unless something really crazy happens in my life. But it's a really cool feeling, and it's fun to watch friends like Scotty and, and other players representing the U.S. come out and show that kind of emotion and that kind of excitement.
When you talked about winning and you had those 2 victories, always from talking to the players, the second one means a lot to the guys on tour of level of respect, right? You can do it once, but then back it up with another win. Did that do that for your career, where you won at a high level twice? So did it help that comfort level knowing you can get the job done? Did that sort of feel like it took your game to another level as well, knowing you can get over the finish line when the pressure was on?
Yeah, and that was the second win for me secured my PGA Tour card for the 3rd year to be on the PGA Tour for the 15 season. And the fact that I lost, so my rookie year was 11, I lost my card. I won in 12 on Korn Ferry, or Nationwide at the time. And then got my lost my card. Sorry, that got my card for 13. I lost it in 13, went back to 14. I won again. And that really made me think that, all right, now I'm going to my third year back. I'm going to be more comfortable out there. And I went out and I started playing pretty well. And I had the best year of my career, which was the 15 season. And out of the 5 years that I played, it was the only year that I retained my card. And again, this was kind of what went into me stepping away. Was I played 5 years on tour, which is very, very good. Like this, but I finished 114th. It wasn't like I was beating the world. I was busting my ass and was in reality mediocre as far as tour standards. And when I did step away, that was something I kind of had to come to grips with, is that I am a very, very good golfer, but to be top 150 in the world is super elite and very, very hard to do. And with the amount of time that I needed to put in to be able to do that, I needed to be 100% golf in my mind to do that. And I wasn't willing to do that with having a family and having my kids.
But it's a fine line, right? It is such a fine line, because obviously you're a great player. You played, every level you've played at, you've been, let's call it successful. You played at the highest level for 5 years. You won on Korn, Ferry. UNLV team was outstanding. You guys, you've had a hell of a career. It is, though, a fine, fine line between being 100th on the money list and 30th, right? It is minuscule. It's so small.
Right.
Is that a fair assessment in your world? Like, it's that the guys are all so good. It's not much difference between that. It's one or two tournaments. It's a break here. It's getting on a heater for 3 weeks. Like, what am I trying to say? It's you could have just as easily been 25th on the money list that year you were 115. It's that close.
Yeah, after I kind of just started leaking oil that year, to be honest. When we went into that little Christmas break area after the fall season, I was 23rd on the FedEx, and then slowly just kind of kept creeping down, and ended up finishing 114. But I think something else goes along with playing out there and not being at the top level is that I kind of understood that I was out kicking my coverage the whole time, and to a fault almost, to where maybe I didn't believe in myself quite as much as I should have, even though I portrayed it. But I had so much fun in my experience. I didn't miss anything when I was out there. I had a great time on and off the course.
Was there any moments when you got out there where you're like, holy shit, I'm on the PGA Tour and that's X and I'm hitting balls next to him? Or, I mean, you can't let yourself get too down in that rabbit hole because, like, you're there to compete and beat that guy. But was there some cool moments like that first year where you're like, this is pretty damn cool? Like, I like this.
I think the main thing that really changed my mind, so I didn't get on my PGA card until 11. But in 2006, my senior year, I was an All-American at UNLV, and I got a sponsor exemption into the Las Vegas Pga Tour event, I was probably 4 months as a professional at that point. And I got out there and was just astounded that every single ball in existence is on the range, and you can just choose whatever ball you wanted to hit.
Yeah.
And they're all brand new. And that was kind of the first time that I really thought that it was a pretty cool thing. And there's dry cleaning in the locker room, and they give you tickets to whatever show you wanted in Vegas. My wife and I, girlfriend at the time, just lived that whole week up. And I had a ball. That first event, I played with Rocco Mediate in the final round, and we got up onto we didn't play great, so we were finishing on the front nine on Sunday. I made the cut, made of my first actual check, which was fun. And we got up onto the fifth hole, which is a par 3, and there was a 2-group wait or something. He pulled up a couple chairs under the tree, and he goes, "Hey, you're going to have a lot of people telling you that you need to change this, you need to change that to get on the PGA Tour. And he goes, don't listen to anybody. You just keep doing what you're doing and get better at exactly what you're doing. And that was a huge boost for me in my mentality, the fact that I was doing the right thing, or at least he put into belief. He's like, everybody's doing the right thing. It's just a matter of how much you believe in it and how much you believe in yourself.
Well, coming from a guy like that who was out there for like ever, right? I mean, yeah. How cool is that?
Yeah, and for me to play with him there, and then a couple of years later, he loses to Tiger in the playoff out at Torrey. And looking back on it, now that I've played Torrey quite a few times in the Farmers, it's just astounding to me how much that actually played into him, because looking at his game compared to everybody else, Torrey is not a course that you'd expect someone like Rocco Mediate to really compete at, but he did.
Yeah, he seems more like a Colonial guy or a John Deere Classic or something, right? I mean, it's just,
right, bunt and pitch and try to get it out there.
Right. Yeah. I always say talent, man. He was out there for like 25 years. So
gosh, that's the thing for me, is that I'm always asked who impressed me when I was out there. And, when I'm asked that by members at my club, I'm just constantly saying, like, I'm pretty good. So there's not really anybody that is super impressive anymore to me that I really wow at, but it's the guys that can do stuff that I can't do, like the Bubba Watsons and the Rory McIlroys and the Dustin, like the guys that just bomb it. And then my answer was always, it wasn't ever any of those guys, though. It was always Colt Knost. Colt was the shortest guy on the tour for most of his 9 years and just consistently pounded fairways. He was the best long iron fairway wood player, hybrid player I'd ever seen, and he could roll it. And that equals a career of 9 years for somebody that, when you look at him, it's hard to believe that he was a professional athlete for that amount of time.
Yeah, I think guys like Brian Gay, not the longest off the tee or anything, but 20 years out there, man. Flagging it with wedges and putting and chipping, and it's good enough. I would say Brian Gay's a great player. 4 or 5 wins in 20 some years? It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And if you watched it though on the driving range, you would be like, that's solid, but it's not, it doesn't wow you.
Right.
I mean, it's good, but it's not a DJ tee shot where you're just like, holy shit, is that thing just pounded?
Right. It just looks effortless length that I'm like, I just don't have that shot. That's the thing about Colt and Brian Gay. Everything they do, you're going to go to most country clubs and most people have that shot at some point, whether or not they're as consistent at it as Brian and Colt. Like, most people can do what they do, which is the most impressive thing to me, that they're able to take that and play at the highest level.
But they can't do it from 150 yards and in.
I mean, I agree.
Guys are just sick. I mean, right there. I mean, Brian Gay from $150 and in is like elite good. 100%.
But what I'm saying is that you go to any country club and let's say Brian Gay hits it to 2 feet. That country club guy can do the same thing, whether or not he does it on call, not nearly as much, obviously.
Exactly.
But when you get someone like Dustin, like, nobody really has that. Like, that's elite, right? But it's fun to see how many different ways in the game of golf you can get it done.
Well, I think the other interesting thing is I think like somebody like a Dustin Johnson has more leeway because of the amount of talent physically and everything. We're like, let's just take Colt for doing it for 9 years, right? Like, there's no margin of error for what he has, right? He's got to get the most out of himself every single year to make that work. Dustin could be at 92% and probably top 10 it with that elite talent, right? So it's always amazing to me, like, the effort and time and how much mental fortitude those guys have who don't have all the physical tools in the world compared to the other elite athletes out there that still compete and win. It's pretty crazy.
Currently with the same thing, I mean, John Rahm's currently number one, and I haven't seen him really make a putt in about a month, and he hasn't finished really outside the top 20.
Right. That's his shit week.
Every facet of his game is just so good that when it really gets going and everything's working, it's like, how do you beat them?
Right, and a bad week is T22nd.
Right.
Yeah, that's elite talent there, right? But I'm with you. I love the guys who just sort of like they just get it out of the dirt, get the most out of the talent they have, and they make a hell of a career out of it. You know,
yeah, who's
Brian
doing it
Gaines
right?
champions.
Peter Malnati's doing it right now.
Yeah,
He's gained actually a fair amount of distance, so I don't want to throw him in that. And that guy works as hard as anybody I've seen, and he definitely is always smiling. So there's a lot to said for that.
Well, Denny McCarthy doesn't bomb it, does he? Exactly. I don't think he's kind of always there. He's kind of like an ATM at this point.
Yeah, it's fun to watch guys like that are just consistently getting more comfortable and getting better and really understanding what they need to do to succeed, because like we said before, there's so many different ways to do it, and finding that right equation for you to do it is pretty important.
Well, I would like to be Brian Gay's caddy on the Champions Tour in about the next 5 years. I think he's going to do quite well on that second circuit. He's going to, you want to talk about a guy, those guys who were competitive on the PGA Tour, then go to the Champions Tour, look out. He's going to win some trophies.
I agree with you. Have you been following Stephen Alker?
Yeah. It's pretty impressive.
That's a pretty fun story, too. And, I played with him a lot on the Korn Ferry Tour the last few years. And last year we were in Salt Lake playing the Utah Korn Ferry event, and I asked him, I was like, man, you're pretty close to 50, aren't you? He's like, I turned 55 days ago. I leave from here, and I'm going up to the Bowling Classic. And he Mondays in, and he just starts going off, man. He played his first 9 events, and his lowest finish was 16th with a win. He lost in a playoff to Phil in the Tour Championship, and it was really fun to see. Those first 9 events, I saw a stat that he had won more money in those 9 events than he had his entire career.
Look at Doug Barron. Same thing, right?
Yes.
Out there in the PGA Tour, took a bunch of years off and taught as a teaching professional. Then, at 48, just recommitted himself, and he's been kicking the hell out of it, right? Mondayed in and won.
It's cool, and that's honestly what I miss the most about playing, is being able to be out there and be around guys like that and just say, "Congrats, man!" It's fun to watch. I don't want to get sappy, but it's kind of emotional and super exciting for me, just standing on the outside looking in.
Well, imagine what it means to a Doug Barron, right? It's sort of, I would have to imagine, and I've had him on the podcast and I've talked to him, super nice guy, but it's got to be like redemption or to let his talent finally come out of how great of a player he really is, right? It's got to be so rewarding. Right, to be one of the best out there at this point, and I know he was mini tour grinding the hell out of it to get ready, playing against the younger guys and working his ass off, and then the opportunity came across, and he's a multiple tour winner out there and one of the best out there right now if you look at it all. So how cool is that story? Just he probably didn't get the most out of his PGA Tour career he wanted, but boy, is he making up for it now. It's a great story.
Yeah, I don't think anything can go past either. We can't look beyond Bernhard. I'm like, how is this guy still doing this?
I don't know. Because usually at that point, those guys, their body just starts to being done, right? Like, you're 62, 63, 64. It's over at that elite level.
Well,
right? They just can't do it.
Even if your body's 100%, you think at that age, how old is he now, 63?
64.
64.
Yep.
At that, when are you going to be like, all right, I'm just losing interest?
Oh, I think he's so driven.
That's 26 years older than me. He's got more money than he can spend in the rest of his lifetime. And you're traveling on the road 18, 20 weeks a year. It just feels like at some point,
more than
whether your body's holding up, it just seems like you just might want to give your brain a rest at some point. But
he must love it to you can't imagine, right? Because you're right, he doesn't need to do this.
Oh,
he just loves it. He loves
it, and it's hard. It's hard to tell the stoic German on whether or not he does love it. Whenever you look at him, he always looks so serious, but there's got to be love involved if you're doing it that long and doing it at such a high level.
And he's one of those guys, too, where the work off the golf course must be tremendous because his body looks like he's 34 years old still.
Yes, 100%.
Right, and he still hits it out there. He jokes he doesn't hit it very far. I watched him play a couple of years ago when there was a senior major, the Players' Championship up in our Chicagoland area. Dude, it's hit pretty good. It's like 280 in the air. I mean, if you took him out to a normal members country club, he'd bomb it past most people. It's popped pretty good. It ain't short.
It's the only reason he says he doesn't hit it that far is because he's 64 and he's just comparing himself to the 20 to 25-year-olds that are coming out that all absolutely tomahawk it. But that's another thing, is that he's playing on the Champions Tour. The courses aren't that long. They play in his favor. So it's fun to watch, man.
Yeah, it's great to watch. Then he finishes 28th at the Masters every year still. So, 34th, he's still, fairly competitive. So I don't think he gives himself enough credit. I watched him play up. It was fun to watch it up close, and he still has enough horsepower to make it work. There's some pop in the bat still.
Yeah, I think that's very obvious just with his finishes. It's not like he's dinking it out there and having woods into every hole.
No. Well, the German driving machine still is all 8 cylinders are still firing. It's amazing to watch. I was going to ask you this too, because you went to your UNLV thing. Your team, man, you guys had some talent on that team. How many of those guys you played with ended up playing on the PGA Tour at some point?
The years that I played was just myself and Ryan Moore, but I'm 6 years younger than Charlie Hoffman. I'm 4 years younger than Adam Scott, Bill Lundy, who's retired now. Jeremy Anderson was on that national championship team, and he played for a year. There's a bunch of guys. Now Kurt Kitayama's out there. I didn't cross paths with him either. Ryan was the only one I crossed paths with. But our coach and program at UNLV put us in such a situation where it was hard to not succeed. You had every opportunity. You could go anywhere in town, essentially, without a problem, and the amenities were all there. So it's unfortunate to see where the program's at right now, and it'll definitely turn around. There's just a little bit of I'm trying to think of the word, a turnover where these guys aren't constantly coming through. It's a little bit of a downtime, but that school was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, the lineage there for a while. I thought Adam was on the same. I must have been off a year. I thought he was on the same team when you were there. But I mean, Ryan Moore.
We would have been on the same team, but Adam left after a year and a half.
That's right.
Yeah, he just kind of came over. I think the main reason he went to UNLV was he was working with Butch Harmon at the time, and Butch was in Vegas, so he came out for a year and a half to go to school. I think everybody was planning on him staying at least 2 years, but he just never came back at that Christmas break and said, I'm going to turn pro, guys.
Yeah, well, talent was there to do so, obviously. Ryan Moore, though, in college, man, the amateur career he had, was he that much better than you guys, or was it still closer? Could you see that talent in college?
Bar none, yes. Ryan, I've told everybody this, Ryan was the most influential person in my life as far as golf. My dad had a bit to do with it too, but he was a dentist. He was a 12 handicap. The only thing that he just believed in me and provided funds for me to pursue it. But my most influential person was Ryan. He was always the best. We played junior golf together. We played college golf together. And he was constantly expecting perfection. And if he didn't win the golf tournament, whatever he was playing in, then he failed. And that was a pretty big realization for me on what you actually needed to do to play good golf.
So it was sort of an influence of excellence, of what it takes to be excellent day in, day out. I'm assuming he worked on everything. Like that just wasn't the golf part of his life. Probably the discipline of his entire life was sort of like that, so he could be at that highest level. Is that sort of a fair statement?
Yeah, I think he was pretty lazy by nature, to be honest, but his self-belief was higher than anybody I'd ever met. He believed that he was the best player and that he was the guy that was going to win, and if he didn't win, then he failed, which to me, I went to Oregon State my first year, and I got kicked off the team because I had a little too much fun and didn't really attend school too often.
Slight problem, but overcomeable. Yeah.
I didn't find it a problem. The coach did. When I transferred to Vegas, Ryan vouched for me as far as the coach went. And I just tried to sign up and do whatever Ryan did because we grew up in Washington together. In junior golf, he was the number one in the country. We get to college, he was number one in the country. And then he had that amazing summer, and he came back after that amazing summer, which is crazy because most guys their stock value is pretty high there, right? So they're probably going to leave school, and he ended up sticking around, which was one of the best years for me to be around that. I came downstairs every day, and on the mantle, we'd have the US Am Trophy, the Public Links Trophy, the NCAA Championship, the World Am Championship, the Western Am, like everything that he won across the board was sitting on our mantle. And for me coming down every day, I just would see this, and I understood that I had to get better. Like if I wanted to do this, I had to get better. One of the things that first really started to make me think that I wanted to play professionally, and this is another thing why Ryan was so influential on me. His first U.S. Public Links Championship that he won in 2002, for Christmas that year, he asked me if I would caddy for him. And so in 2003, I got to caddy for Ryan in the Masters at Augusta, and it was the first time in my life that I started to actually think that I was going to try to play professionally. I knew I was good enough up until that point to play in college and to compete with really no goals. It was more just wanting to have fun and be on a college team and enjoy the college experience. But when I went there for the first time and I saw all the best players in the world at arguably the best tournament in the world, I wasn't really that impressed. I thought that everybody would be a lot better. And so I got in this little qualm with myself that evening, just like, how can you say that about the best players in the world and whatever, this little inside my head argument. And all of a sudden a light bulb went off and I was like, oh, I'm pretty good. Right. And
exactly.
Yeah. From that moment on, I started playing with an actual purpose to play professionally and to do it for a living. And that it just changed the mindset and the goal of how I was going to attack my practice, how I was going to attack playing. And it was a ton of, sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
Well, no, but it makes sense, right? Because it showed that you had the tools in the toolbox, right? Like, I got that. I can do that. And this guy's a 5-time tour winner or whatever it might be. Or this guy's ranked 4th in the world. I can do that.
It also made me realize that when you're following golf on TV, professionals seem a lot better because the coverage is following the guys that are in the lead and the top 15 for the most part, unless Tiger's in 30th place or who gets a lot of media. Let's say Jordan Spieth is in 30th place. They'll show a few shots here of them, but when you're showing the top 15 guys in a field that are on the PGA Tour and are elite players, they're all playing very well and confident in what they're doing. So shots are going to be closer, more putts are going to be made. And when you see that on coverage, sometimes it can be a little demoralizing. But at the same time, when you go out there and you're playing with someone that's in 30th place, making a pretty good check, or even 25th place, making a pretty good check, it's just not as sharp. And they're not threatening to win, but they're threatening to make a pretty good living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're just playing good, solid golf, but it's not PGA Tour winning level golf or Korn Ferry Tour winning level golf that week. It's just good, solid golf.
That's what's so interesting about the tour also, is that when you're making cuts, and let's say you're finishing 50th to 65th, but you're making a lot of cuts, and like it's right there. You know things are right there, and it's just a matter of keeping that positive attitude that it's about to click. It's about to click. And making cuts is a huge thing because you're playing against the best players in the world.
What's the biggest difference you saw from the Korn Ferry Tour to the PGA Tour? Not disregarding the price the purse sizes and the prestige, but just golf courses, the level of talent, is it closer than most people think, or is there a pretty good sized gap between the two?
Talent level, it's really, 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 really close. The biggest difference that I could say is that, one, courses are a little more demanding. Fairways are more of a premium. I'd say that's the only part that's a lot different. Is the fairways are more of a premium on the PGA Tour. The rough is longer. You could see it in the Arnold Palmer this last week. That rough was long, and it looked like a U.S. Open the way it was playing. The real difference that you can see is the overall swag that people have on the tour. People are very confident. Everybody's an alpha out there, and most guys kind of that you choose to be around are all kind of running their mouth to each other, all in good fun. But in practice rounds, everybody has such high self-belief, and that's the biggest thing in any aspect of whether you're playing sports or whether you're in business or whatever you do in the world. If you don't have self-belief, you don't have a prayer. You have to believe in yourself.
Would you play practice rounds by yourself? Would you try to do money games? Like, what did you do to get yourself sort of competitive ready for that week? How did you sort of approach it?
It's hard for me to not play golf and play for free. I have to have something on the line, whether it's $5, whether it's $10 Nassau, $20, $100 Nassau. My standard game out there was usually a $200 team match play, and you could press for half. So you were exposed for $300 at the most. Yeah,
but it kept you focused. You're not just looking at the pretty trees and listening to the birds.
I think there's a lot to be said for putting some kind of pressure on every shot that you hit if you want to play at the highest level. There's no just going up and tapping in, because let's say you just go up and you just wing a 5-footer, whether or not you make it or not. If you don't make it, it does a little more damage than you actually think, even if you're not trying. But you're just like, why would I waste my time not trying? I might as well take my time, go through my routine, do the same thing that I'm going to do for every shot. And I think that's a huge part in teaching younger people, is like, just do the same thing over and over and over, and try to get out of result oriented and more into your actual process, which I think that if you're going to create a process, there needs to be something on the line. There needs to be some kind of risk and some kind of reward.
I always think it's interesting too. You're talking about like the gunslinger mentality on the guys in the PGA Tour. Like, if I took my wife out to a golf tournament, she plays 2 rounds of golf a year. She doesn't, she could really care less. I do the golf thing.
Right.
And I just said, though, here's a group walking on the Wednesday Pro-Am. Tell me who the pro golfer is. She'd be able to figure that out a mile away without knowing one of the guys out there, just the way they walk down the fairway.
Right. It's the same thing with my wife. My wife plays 18 holes a year. We play a couples events, scrambles in the summertime at my club, and she got offended once. She goes, "You wouldn't pick me for your team?" I'm like, "No." And she goes, "Why?" She got a little bit offended. I'm like, "Why would you not pick me?" I was like, "Because you don't care if you win or lose, and I don't want that on my team." I care, and I need you to try to win. And if you don't care and you're giggling, it's like, it annoys me.
My wife and I do like 2 or 3 wine, dine, and 9 at Kishwaukee Country Club in DeKalb, Illinois. We're like out there with a group of friends, and like the girls, for the most part, they don't give 2 shits if we win or lose. The guys are grinding over this thing for 9 holes, right? Because I can't not help it, right? They're more interested in where's the wine and is the music loud enough. And it's funny, man. We do the exact same thing. We're grinding over these 5-footers, and they're just like, I don't know. I'm wearing a cute outfit, and I want to play, and I want more wine.
Where's my rosé? Where's my rosé? We're out of rosé.
drive back to the clubhouse and get more. That's why we're like getting exact yardages. Where's the wind coming from? You can't turn it off, right? Like, it's all within reason. But like, I agree with you. Like, if I'm out there to do this, like, we want to win. And if we don't win, that's okay. But I'm going to try hard. And have fun at the same time.
I will tell you what. So up in Washington, where I live, Lakewood, Washington, I play at Tacoma Country Club. We have a game, and our handicap system shuts down between like October 15th and March 1st. And we don't enter any scores for that time. So you're locked in at whatever your handicap is when you go. And I was still playing up until August. So I was still fairly sharp, and I've been hustling lately trying to get this little media project off the ground, and I'm not playing as much. I'm playing maybe once every, let's say, 10 days. And so my handicap's the same, but my skills are slowly going down. Just like anybody knows, if you don't have a club in your hand all the time, all of a sudden it's just a little bit of a guessing game. And so I'm playing to a +5 or +6, depending on the tees out at my club. And I'm realistically about a scratch right now. And I'm just getting fleeced hand over fist by everybody. I'm giving too many shots I'm not giving too many shots because that's what it is, but it's hard for me to compete, and it's really starting to grind on me. But a couple of days ago when I got the sponsor exemption in Knoxville, it flipped the switch a little bit. I'm like, all right, I have something to prepare for now. For me, it was hard stepping away from the game that guys would ask me to come out and play, and I'd be like, all right. I'm like, oh, you get to practice a little bit before? I'm like, for what? Like, I don't have any interest really at this point. I'm playing with you guys that are all very efficient golfers between a scratch and 5 handicaps, but at the same time, I've played with the best in the world, and I have to get in a different mindset knowing that I'm going to have to start giving people shots. And there's a little new strategy now.
Well, and I'm sure they love beating you, right? Like, you got to be the target out there.
Oh yeah. And I hate it.
Right.
And I hate it.
Right.
And I have been the target for the last 5 months. And I was so happy when March 1st came around and I can start entering scores, but it's going to go lower again now that I'm going to start putting in a little work preparing for this tournament. And this tournament coming up in Knoxville, as far as you said, does it give me any leeway as far as going out and freewheeling? I'd say yes and no. Like, I still have this goal. Like, if I go out and win and all of a sudden I can parlay this into another golf career, that's the goal. Like, there's a big opportunity for me to go out and do that. And even if I can not win, because I know that's a little bit of a stretch with just as far as what I've been doing, but there's good golf in me, and I know that there is. It's just a matter of getting it at the right time. And if I have that goal, let's say I can finish in the top 25 and roll that over into another start and another start. I still have status out there, so I can get in the reshuffle. And I'm excited, man. The fact that I didn't go to Q school and I don't have a full schedule, the fact that I got a sponsor exemption, I really hope to take advantage of it. And not only that, I want to do the people that gave me the sponsor exemption, I want to do them proud.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're a competitor, man. Like, that's the mindset you should have, right? Like, if you're going to put the work in behind it, and you've been there, you've won, you know what it takes. Like, it's like you're 56 years old trying to do this, right? You're in your 30s still, so it's not like it's not realistic here.
No, I'm pumped to play in a tournament though, because that's the biggest part that I miss. It's just the itch to be out and on the road. It's been interesting trying to figure out really who I am without being a full-time golfer. Yeah, there's been fighting some battles of I don't know, depression and anxiety of what's the next move going to be, because golf you've heard a lot of people say it, even if, especially like Kevin Kisner, even if you're not winning, golf pays pretty well to play pretty solid. And when you get away from it and that's all that you know, and I've graduated from school in 2006 and now we're looking at 16 years later, I'm like, what are my skills? I don't really know what my skills are outside of hitting a 7-iron to a couple feet and hopefully making some putts.
But I would argue your personality and your persona from doing it for that long, just kind of like Colt was always funny, witty, smart, turned it into a broadcast career.
Yeah, that's what I'm attempting to do. So as far as PGA Tour Live, I'm actually hosting Monday after the Players on SiriusXM with Colt, his Drew Stoltz is one of my good friends, and when he's going on a vacation with his family, so I'm going to fill in for them. I've been filling in a little bit for the golf channel on there for Pga Tour radio occasionally, so that's been fun, just kind of getting reps in. And then I've got something brewing on the side that I'm trying to get built, but again, it's time consuming, and a lot of it is it's exciting right now, trying to make something happen and not really knowing whether or not it'll take off, but the excitement, it's the same thing as early on in the golf career when you're chasing it and just trusting that it will happen and trusting the process.
Yeah, but you, like I said, though, I think you've laid a great foundation. If there is going to be a media thing, like you stand out, like guys who know who you are. It's a certain look, it's a personality, right? And I think the golf coverage is also getting a little bit different, which guys like you, I think, are going to be more in demand versus the traditional wear the suit, follow every correct political thing, never say anything bad about a player if they F up, right? I mean, like I think Colt's doing a great job, and it's a little bit more refreshing. It's a little bit lighter, and it's a little more fun. It's a little bit more of the shit you would give each other if we were playing around a golf. Like, I don't even know you, but I'd be like throwing little barbs at you by the third hole, and you'd be jamming them back at me. And those, like I think it's changing a little bit, right? Where
it is.
People want to see more realistic banter back and forth between the announcers versus the, well, he's got a 3-footer on number 7 and back to you. But like, it's no, like, give me somebody with some personality.
I think it's going to be easier too. I think it's in a position right now where Colt's coming in and he's refreshing. And as far as some of the other guys that are out there on the CBS coverage, I think Nance is always going to have a job just because he's got the most beautiful voice known to man. I feel like he could have an entirely different career just reading books on tape. But I think that some of the guys are becoming a little bit, I don't want to say irrelevant because they've done so much in the golf world, but Colt's still young enough that he knows a lot of the young players coming up. He knows a lot of the players still playing. They're still, I mean, he's 36 years old, and he's going to have a really good career because he knows and has relationships with all these people. When you're out there and you have an older guy come up that you definitely know who they are because you follow golf, but at the same time, they have to get to know you. If you're playing well, and let's say your first week you're playing well, and they're covering you, and they come out and they chat to you on the range. There's only so much that they can find out in that small window of time, besides what they can find out on the internet. There's not as much of like the interpersonal relationship with the older guys. I think that's where Colt really has a strength, is that he has relationships with so many guys that he's able to kind of show that in his coverage.
You got to watch that a little bit, because is it hard for you to put on, well, I'm using this for media, so I don't want to use this. Is this on the record, off the record, versus talking to my friend? Is it sort of been any situations on that where you got to think, am I talking to this guy as a fellow tour player or a media member?
For sure. But I think that both myself and my friends know that that's what it is. And they, being friends, they put trust in you to not make them look foolish out there. Make them look good. And that's part of the skill, I think, is being able to relate to the player and the crowd or the audience at the same time, and make it fun and witty, but at the same time not putting them in a bad position that could potentially hurt them with sponsors or potentially make them look foolish. But at the same time, you have to
call a bad shot if you see it, right, or a poor decision.
Oh, yeah, or a bad outfit. Like what's going on? Yeah, but that's the thing, is that I think that's something that Colt does pretty well. I think it's something that I do pretty well, is that people know that everything that we're doing is coming from love and from friendship. And this is just kind of part of the new chapter of our life, trying to create something for ourselves at the same time as maybe exposing them a little bit. But I think that anything that we say is going to be pretty factual. So when it comes down to it, if I go out to dinner with somebody in the evening that I kind of roasted, they understand why, because they deserved it.
Or it's fair, right? That was a bad shot under the time, or the wrong club choice, or right. I mean, you got to call balls and strikes, as you said, as a tour player.
100%. And I haven't known. I'm interested to see what happens with Colt, being that he's on the major coverage on CBS. I'm still streaming right now, which I'm really having a lot of fun doing, just getting in reps, talking about it and trying to be more smooth with just the way that I speak. And a lot of it is different when you have somebody talking in your ear while you're talking, and naturally you usually stop talking when somebody starts talking, but you just have to keep going. So a lot of that is becoming a little bit more natural. But I'm interested to see if it does change at all with friendships. I don't see it with people that I'm close personal friends with. But at some point it may hurt relationships at some point. I don't see it happening, and it does. It's a little scary in the back of my mind, but with the right people, I just don't think that I'm ever going to really cross the line with a friend. It'll be more somebody that I know on the edge that I guess I may cross the line with, but I don't. That's the thing, is that you don't want to ever cross it. You just want to toe it.
Yes, and I think you have to. I mean, I would assume most of those guys would agree with you at dinner that night that was a shitty golf shot, and you're right. I mean, they understand, there's going to be coverage of this, and they're used to the pressure and have the spotlight on them. So,
right. And
man up and deal with it.
The people that I hang out with, too, at the end, they're going to be like, oh, well, it's easy to sit in the booth and start calling it when your game couldn't cut it. I'm like, yeah, I got you, dude. I get it.
Yeah, but you've been on the other side of the coin, too, so you understand. I'm assuming they respect the fact that you've been out. It's not me doing it. You're doing it. You've been on both sides of that coin, and you know what it's like to be the player, and now you're kind of flipping sides. So I think there'd still be, respect from their side that they trust you, that it's not going to be over the line.
Yeah, 100%. And the fact that I have done it and I have relationships, same with Colt, that he has relationships with these people, that really brings a lot of insight to the viewer, and comparing what you've done in your life, what the player and the interaction in a group may be, or what the player may be feeling as far as stress coming down the stretch. And I think that's really something that you're trying to do, is make golf fun, make it interesting, and really just cover the shots, but make it entertaining and relate the viewer and the amateur golfer to what could possibly be going through professionals' minds.
My fantasy is to get J.J. Colleen and Petey, or J.J. and Ed Lohr in like a 16th tower with a case of beer, and just let those guys do a commentary on a PGA Tour. 100%. Can you imagine that?
I think it's gone.
Oh, my God.
I think everybody has thought about that. And
like
almost like a Mystery Science Theater 2000, like just where you have the three little heads at the bottom and they're all commentating, throwing popcorn at the screen.
Yep.
With a beer, but I just don't. The only thing it won't happen because the PGA Tour won't allow it to happen.
No, can you imagine that shit show of a disaster of getting Petey and JJ with a case of beer in a booth and just put them on the Saturday afternoon coverage on like a par 3?
Yeah, I want to see.
Oh my God.
Yeah, or what if they did it this week at Saturday at the Players? Could you imagine? On 17th hole?
It would be the greatest thing ever.
Oh my gosh, these nuts are shriveling up. Who knows?
Oh yeah, right. And like literally get them lit enough where somebody has to carry them out of the tower. Like it would be the greatest broadcast. I'd watch it, but I like this.
Everybody would. I think it'll be interesting to see how this Netflix show does with the PGA Tour, because I think you're going to see a lot more swearing and extracurricular. I don't know if it's all on course. I'm interested to see how the show actually goes, but it could open doors to something similar. Like if you could have a premium, like let's say the NFL ticket or guys that have, what's it called? The Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, it's pretty ruthless in those locker rooms. I know it's a completely different sport, and our sport has a pretty clean image, and it's pretty cookie cutter as far as charitable causes and yada yada. But I really think that this Netflix thing might open doors. I'm interested to see how they actually film it and what the PGA Tour allows to be on it, or if there are any kind of agreements that are on it. because as far as I'm concerned, the people that I've met that are the biggest degenerates in the sports world are golfers.
Oh yeah, I mean, they could do like I would watch a Netflix series on like Steve Marino, right? Like how great would that be?
I love that guy.
Right, that would be the greatest thing ever. Just like follow him around for a month. Can you imagine how interesting that shit would be?
It would be great. I think that you could do it with so many different guys on the tour, and the only thing is it's one of the sports where you can go out and tie one on the night before and show up, not feel super great, and put up the round of your life. The lowest round I shot on the PGA Tour was 62, and it was at Cordoval for what used to be the Safeway. I'm trying to remember what it was called, but it's during the Safeway, the Napa tournament now. They moved it over to Napa, but it was in Cordoval, Northern California. Yeah. And I had food poisoning the night before and was just throwing up all night. I get up and get on the range. I probably hit 3 balls in an hour and was just so fatigued doing it. And I would just sit down, and I threw up on the range a couple different times. And I go out and I tie the course record that day. It's the same thing in, like, if you're hungover in golf, if you go out there, you have the ability to almost beware of the sick golfer. You have the ability to, all you want to do is get done. And what's the fastest way to get done? Get the ball in the hole as fast as possible and go sit on the side of the green.
Tunnel vision, 2.5 hour round, get it done.
There's no more thinking. All you're thinking about is how terrible you feel. And you strictly go back to ability and relying on everything that you've done. You're like, just hit it over there. It becomes so simple because you're not thinking about anything else other than how terrible you're feeling.
I vote Steve Marino Netflix series. I think that would be the greatest thing ever.
I can get on board.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah, I second it.
I got a couple quick hitters for you, and we'll get you out of here, man. Thanks for doing this today, because I really, really appreciate it. So whatever kind of comes to your mind on this standpoint, and I'll throw a few at you here. So you kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but if you're bringing 3 other guys, you're going to have a money game, and you're going to have dinner afterwards, so you're going to hang out and have some drinks. Like, who are your 3 favorite guys on tour you're going to take to have a fun day like that?
2 of them very quickly come to mind, Kevin Kisner and Charlie Hoffman. Those guys are the best shit talkers I've ever seen out there on tour. I enjoy having a drink with them afterwards. My rookie year, Kevin and I were both rookies together, and that was who I palled around with a bunch. He and Jim Renner. And Charlie kind of took me under his wing at UNLV. He was older than me, but he was still living in Vegas and invited me out when I was still in college, and I started playing money games with him and Dean Wilson and Bill Lundy, other UNLV guys when they came to town, Chris Riley, Chad Campbell, Bob May was in the group. And the first day I showed up, I didn't really have any idea what I was doing in the game. But Charlie was a big influence on me, and he's fun to go out with at night. Yeah, I don't know the 4th. I'll say he doesn't play anymore, but I'll say Graham Dillette. Graham's I think he's still got starts and still has status, but he's been fighting some back injuries. But we played a lot on the Canadian tour together, and that guy's fun to go out with at night. He's Canadian, so he can definitely get after it. That's a pretty good group right there.
That's a good group, yeah.
Kisner, Hoffman, and Dillette.
That's having yourself a day. All right, I'm with you on that one. You lived out in Vegas. I'm sure you caused some mild trouble in Vegas. What's the best Vegas story you've got?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of one that I can say on air.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want. Hopefully, the statute of limitations is past the point as well.
All right. So I was in college, and Charlie got back from Colonial, and he just finished 5th. And he calls me when he's in the airport. He's like, "Hey, I land tonight. Can you pick me up from the airport and take me back?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can do that." That day, it was locals night in Vegas, so we ended up going to a club called Tryst at the Wynn. And when I picked Charlie up, I was planning on going that night with J.C. Deacon, who's now the what is he doing now? He's the head coach at Florida men's golf team. My brother-in-law lived with me at the time, and we were all planning on going out there, and it was like 2-for-1 bottle service. So we're like, all right, this is what we're going to do, and we're going out. And I picked Charlie up from the airport, and we go back to his house, and I asked him on the way to his house, I was like, hey, we're going to do this. You want to go out tonight? He's like, yeah, man, I'm in. He goes, let's just go back to my house. I got to check some mail. I got to do some stuff. I was like, all right. So we go back there. Amongst his mail, he starts going through it, and he opens this letter, and he's got a $10,000 fine from the PGA Tour for throwing an F-bomb. And he doesn't have any recollection of what it is. He's like, I'm not paying this. I'm not paying this. I don't know actually what happened to it, but we get dressed and we go down. And we're supposed to have multiple people, like 7 people. Everybody bails except for Charlie, my brother-in-law, and I, and we have 3 bottles of booze.
Oh, God.
So we start kind of going in, and Charlie calls his college roommate who still lives in town, and he and his wife come. So we have 5 people and 3 bottles of booze now, which is way better. But we end up polishing this thing off, and we get back like out of the club. We're pretty banged up. We go over to the casino. I have 0 money in college. Charlie starts gambling, and like you can hardly understand what he's saying the entire time. I end up having to go. I have workouts. It's 2:30 at this point. We have college workouts. It's my senior year, and it's May. Like I'm out of school at this point. I'm done. I'm graduated, but we still have regionals and nationals to go. And I get a cab, and I go, and then we have workouts at 5:30 a.m. So I get a cab, and I get to the workout, and my assistant coach shows up, and I'm sideways, and he is so mad that he ends up leaving the rest of the team there to work out, and he takes me back home, and he tells me to get in his car, and I sit in the back seat behind him, directly behind him. There's nobody else in the car, but I'm afraid he's going to hit me. So I get behind him to where he like can't reach me, and he's just chewing me out the entire time. Or he drops me off. I get out, and he's like, "I need to talk to you later today." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, man. I'm sorry. I'm scared." But at this point, I get so lucky. My head coach doesn't show up. This is the first time he may find out about this, but I don't know if he even listens to podcasts. So that'll be good. When I get back to my house, I go into my condo, and my brother-in-law is sitting there, and he's got like a Roberto's Taco Shop burrito just sitting on his chest, hasn't taken a bite. And I have my phone, and I call Charlie. I'm like, "Hey, I got kicked out of workouts. I don't think this is good." He goes, "Oh, all right. Well, I'm at a club right now. Do you want to come?" I'm like, "Yep. Hang on." So I wake up my brother-in-law. I'm like, "Come on, we're gonna go to this club." I wake up, probably not the best decision I made in my life. I get in my car and we drive to this club. And when we get there...
Wait, so Charlie never went home?
No.
Oh, my God.
Charlie never went home.
No wonder you took him in the group.
He
never went home.
No, we go meet him, and by the time I get there, it's probably 5:45 or 6 in the morning at this point. And we walk in. My brother-in-law walks in, and I'm like, "Oh, my gosh, I don't have any ID." So now I have to leave and go home. And eventually my brother-in-law comes back at like 8:30 in the morning after spending the next couple hours with Charlie. Like, "What did you guys do?" He goes, "I have no idea."
Were you hung over? Your brother-in-law had to be hung over for 2 days from that one.
Oh, yeah, but it was a rough
Charlie
one.
Hoffman can get after it back in the day.
He can get after it with the best of them.
Love it.
I can just tell you another little side story on how generous and what a boss he is. So it was a year, probably 2015, and I called Charlie and was like, "Hey, he had a place on the back of the range at TPC Las Vegas." And I asked him if I could come down before the Sony because it's cold and rainy and snowy up in Washington. I was like, "Can I come down just like for a week before and practice and play out of your place?" He's like, "Yeah, man, I won't even be there. I'll be in San Diego, so you're welcome to the house." My wife and I go down for New Year's. We asked him if we could have a few people over since I went to school there. I still know a lot of people. So we ended up having like a little New Year's gig. It was probably 8 people, nothing big. But we made like a steak dinner, had some wine. Charlie had in his freezer a bottle of Don Julio 1942. And I was like, guy's on tour, he'll be okay. So we polished the thing off, and I sent him a picture of the empty bottle. I'm like, hey, bud, sorry about this, but you're out of 1942. And he goes, oh, no, don't worry. Go out into the garage. There's a couple cases of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we went back out and opened up another one. We felt bad polishing that off, but we definitely opened another one and had some. But the guy's always been a class act, and he'll do anything for you, even though he's known as the single or the biggest dick out there.
Oh, sounds like a good guy, man. I could hang with him a little bit.
You could hang with him for sure. He's fun.
Best golf shot you ever hit under pressure?
Under pressure.
One that stands out where it's like you needed it, and you needed this for a cut or a tour card or a win. Like,
all right,
no bullshit. You got to man up and hit a shot.
Here's the best shot I've ever had under pressure, and it wasn't really a big tournament, but in my mind, it was the biggest shot I will ever hit in my life. I don't think I can outdo it. There is a pro scratch event in Phoenix every year at Greyhawk, right before the Sony, and I play with Drew Stoltz, who's the sleaze on Gravy and the Sleaze and Golf Subpar. And he and I have been friends forever. And so we're kind of coming down the stretch of this 2-man thing, and a bunch of pros come out and stop and play before they head to Sony. But the last hole, we were 2 back, and I hole out for double eagle on the last hole to win.
That's a good golf shot.
Under pressure, I don't know if there was that much pressure because there were a lot of drinks being drank. It wasn't like I felt a lot of pressure, but that was the coolest shot I ever hit. Under pressure, I don't know if it was a single shot, but the best round that I had played in my life was 2013, and I had an abysmal year. I missed the first 13 cuts of the year on the tour and just was in a dark place and not playing well. And the last few events, I just really came to grips and really was at ease with, I had to go back to Q school. I was going to have to go back through the whole thing. I was going to lose all my status. But going into the final event at the Wyndham in Greensboro, I was 238th on tour. If you finish outside the 200th on the FedEx Cup, then you lose all status. Like, you don't go back to Korn Ferry, you don't get to do anything. So it was 238, and in the final round wasn't anything great. I was probably like 30th place, and I'm paired with Rory Sabatini, and we're walking down the second hole, and he asked me, he's like, how are you playing this year? I'm like, man, I'm struggling. I'm 238 on FedEx. He goes, all right, let's make 10 birdies today. And so parred the second hole, I birdied 3, and he's like, all right, 9 more. Let's go, line 9 more. And he was at my back the entire time cheering me on. I shot 6 under, no bogeys. He also shot 6 under, and that moved me to 198, which helped me get, at least I got to go to Korn Ferry finals and the playoffs. And there I missed the cut in the first one, but I played pretty well the rest of the time. But I ended up being the bubble boy, and I just missed my card, getting my card back because I gave myself the opportunity at the Wyndham to get into that.
Right.
And
huge. Yeah.
And once I got through there, being that I was the bubble boy for the tour, I was one of the top seeds going in. So I had a full year and a full schedule on Korn Ferry and played well. And that's when I got my second win out there. And that round gave me a ton of belief in myself. So that was a big round. It wasn't the big shot. The big shot was the pro scratch event, but yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Best 2 or 3 golf courses architecturally you've ever had the opportunity to play in. What makes those golf courses fantastic? Not necessarily tour courses like, could be a Pine Valley of the world or, pick your other, top rated places in the world.
Yeah, I haven't played Pine Valley. I have a friend that has invited me a few times, and I just haven't made the real effort, which at some point I better do that, otherwise you may resend that. I'm a big fan of old Donald Ross courses.
Who
I
isn't?
think, yeah,
so
I
good.
think Pinehurst number 2 is just straight in front of you, pretty good. I haven't had the ability or the opportunity to play Augusta, but just being that I got to go out there, it was pretty intriguing. And like modern day designers, I like most Fazio courses. I just think they're very pretty. Let me think here. I'm just going to go to tour courses just because it's easier. I really like Riviera. I think that it is just old school, hard. Nothing's tricky about it. It's all right in front of you. It's just difficult. If you don't hit a good shot, then it's tough. I played the U.S. Open in 16 at Oakmont, another one that is just right in front of you. Nothing tricky about it. It's just hard. If you don't hit the fairway, you're going to have a hard shot. If you don't hit the green, you're going to have a hard shot. If you're above the hole on the green, you're going to have a hard shot.
Brutally difficult, though, right? Just brutally difficult.
Yeah, it's just super difficult. Like, there's just no room for error. And then I'll say Olympic Club. Olympic has the same thing as Oakmont. It's just right in front of you. It's just difficult. You have to be on the proper side of the fairway. You have to be on the proper side of the hole. My favorite course, and I don't know if it's architecturally the best, but I just like the layout of it, is called the Preserve, just outside of Monterey, California. And it's just on this old wildlife preserve that is at the base of the redwoods. So you'll see random redwood trees throughout the course. A lot of wildlife as far as boar and deer and, yeah, pheasants running around. It's pretty awesome.
Where do you put Pebble Beach at?
I think Pebble Beach has some of the best holes in the world. But I think you could throw any course in the country on that piece of property and it's going to be spectacular. I don't think you can screw up the water holes at all. You could change all the holes that are on the water there and just make them slightly different, and they're still going to be good. I think the 18th hole there is arguably the best hole in the world as far as risk-reward and scenic view.
It's pretty good,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, but when you get to the holes that are not on the water, it's just a little blah for me, like 1, 2, 3, and then you get to 11, 12, 13. 12 is pretty good par 3. It's just a very small green when you're hitting in a long iron. And when there's no wind and there's no elements, it's absolutely gorgeous and it's pretty gettable. You can score on it pretty well. But when it is windy, it's tough, and that's the defense that it has. Yeah. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm not sure if it ranks in my top as far as courses that I would want to play every day, but I would definitely like to play the holes on the water every single day because they are spectacular.
Yeah, that stretch between like 8, 9, 10, 11, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, you could throw 4, 5, and 6 in there also, and 7.
Yeah, 7's an awesome little hole.
Yeah, you just take every hole on the water, and it's awesome.
Yeah. It's a cool place to play. I always ask people where that one is, or I've been fortunate enough to play Cypress once. That was pretty impressive as well, right?
I haven't played Cypress. I see it whenever we're playing the tournament out there from the third hole at Spyglass, but I haven't played it. And here's a funny story. I had some buddies that went out there, and they were invited. I'm not going to name names, it's just so that they can somehow maybe get invited at some point. But they were guests of a member. They did not play with the members, so they weren't allowed to go in the clubhouse. They weren't allowed to really practice or use facilities. They just had to go to the first tee blind. And so they didn't know that, and they show up an hour early thinking that they're going to go in, buy some stuff, which apparently they could, but they had to send in somebody that worked there to do it. They weren't allowed to get any drinks or whatever, so they're like, okay. So they're with one of my buddies in the truck, and they sat out in the parking lot and literally tailgated for an hour before in the parking lot of Cypress. And I don't know
Changing
if
their
they,
shoes. The whole 9 yards.
Literally putting the tailgate down, sitting on it, and just like drinking beer. And I don't know if anybody was super impressed with that.
Well, I don't know if I'd want that first tee shot either without like proper warm. We could bean a car. It's the strangest thing because you like fire it over the road. So,
right.
It's a little low on the face on that one.
It's a pretty boss move, I think, by the Cypress group, though. The fact that if you're not playing there with a member, it'd be like, nah, man, jungle rules. You just got to show up to that tee cold.
Yep. Go play. Hey, I respect the guys, too, for dropping the tailgate and literally being like, all right, if you leave me no other choices, this is what I'm doing. I'm not hitting this first tee shot dead sober. Right.
If you don't let me get warm on the range, then I'm going to get warm out here.
Exactly. You do what you got to do in those survival conditions.
Right.
Well, hey, man, like, thanks so much for doing this. Like, I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation. Like, good luck with everything in the media world and still playing. I think you're going to do great in the media world, man. You got a personality and a look, and people know who you are, and people are ready for new commentators, voices, perspectives in professional golf. And I think it's going to be really interesting to watch your career path over the next few years. I think you're going to do great. I really do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time, and thanks for having me. I'm a fan of everything that you've been doing. I followed you since I started seeing your product on Will Wilcox.
Well, I appreciate. Yeah, I mean, I love doing the equipment side, and I actually love doing the podcast as well. It's always great to have these interesting conversations with people in the game and people I admire, and I've been I'm fortunate enough that I get to do both sides of it. So I really do appreciate it.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again for having me. Keep in touch. Love to talk again.